What if I told you there's a building so massive, so incredibly enormous, that astronauts can actually see it from space? Wait, hold on. Before you start nodding enthusiastically, put that knowledge on hold. Because as it turns out, that famous fact you learned in elementary school might not be entirely factual. Welcome to What Is, and today we're diving into one of the most iconic structures in human history. A monument so legendary, it inspired a certain salad dressing, countless action movies, and at least one very confusing DreamWorks animated film. We are talking about the Great Wall of China. But here's what most people don't know. The Great Wall isn't actually one wall. It wasn't built in a single lifetime. And no, you can't see it from space with the naked eye. Sorry, Neil Armstrong. So let's reset the narrative. Today we're going to uncover the real story behind the world's most famous barrier. We'll explore ancient China before the wall, discover why emperors became obsessed with building it, and learn how millions of workers literally moved mountains to make this happen, and separate the fascinating truth from the entertaining myths. Grab your snacks, get comfortable, and let's get into it. 1. Origins: China before the building. To understand why anyone would think to build a wall stretching over 21,000 kilometers, we need to travel back in time, way back, to a period when China wasn't even yet China, at least as we know it today. It's around 221 BCE, and the land that would become China is fractured into 7 major warring states. Think Game of Thrones, but with more silk and fewer dragons. These states, the Qi, Chu, Yan, Han, Chao, Wei, and Qin, are constantly at each other's throats, fighting over territory, resources, and generally just being excellent neighbors. The dominant military power among these states is Qin, and under the leadership of a remarkably ambitious king named Yin Zheng, Qin is about to do something unprecedented. Yin Zheng was by all accounts a complex guy. Historians call him a ruthless unifier who burned books, buried scholars alive, and enforced brutal laws. But he also accomplished something no one else had done before. He conquered all 7 warring states and unified them into a single empire in 221 BCE. This was huge. For the first time in Chinese history, the entire territory is under one ruler. Yin Zheng takes the title Qin Shi Huang, basically meaning the first emperor of Qin, and essentially invents the concept of imperial China. Now here's where things get interesting. Qin Shi Huang isn't just content with conquering territories, he's paranoid about losing them. You see, his newly unified empire sits right next to some very threatening neighbors to the north, particularly the nomadic Xiongnu, a confederation of warrior tribes who excel at mounted warfare and have a nasty habit of raiding Chinese settlements. While the Chinese perfected bureaucracy, advanced metallurgy, and developed breathtaking art, the Xiongnu perfected something equally as important: horse riding and archery from horseback. This made them incredibly difficult to fight using traditional Chinese military tactics, which favored infantry and chariots. The Xiongnu weren't just raiders either, they were a legitimate political and military power. At their height, they even forced the Chinese to pay tribute, essentially paying these nomads to please, for the love of all that's holy, stop attacking us. Qin Shi Huang had had enough, and so according to historical records, he ordered the construction of what would become the first iteration of the Great Wall, a series of fortifications connected to protect the empire's northern border. But here's the twist. The wall built under Qin Shi Huang wasn't the wall you see in photos today. It was crude, built primarily from compacted earth and straw, and looked dramatically different from the majestic stone structure that would come later. And interestingly, it wasn't actually called the Great Wall by the Qin. That name came much later. The earliest segments were known as various names: the walls, the boundaries, the ramparts. The first emperor essentially said, "We need a really big fence," and thus a legend was born, though it would take more than 2,000 years to reach its modern form. But the Qin dynasty didn't last long. Qin Shi Huang died in 210 BCE, and his empire collapsed shortly after, giving way to the Han dynasty, which would take over the wall project and expand it significantly. 2. Purpose. Why was it built? Now you might be thinking, okay, some paranoid emperor built a big wall to keep out the bad guys. Pretty straightforward, right? Oh my friends, if only it was that simple. The main purpose of the Great Wall evolved over time, and understanding these shifting motivations reveals fascinating insights about Chinese history, geopolitics, and human stubbornness. Let's break it down. Purpose number 1. Military defense. This is the obvious one, and where we should start. The Great Wall served as a defensive barrier against northern invaders, primarily the Xiongnu, and later various nomadic groups like the Mongols and the Manchus. But here's what the movies don't show you. The wall wasn't actually designed to be a fortress that enemies could never breach. Military strategy was way more nuanced than that. The wall served several defensive functions. First, it acted as a surveillance platform. Watchtowers, often built at regular intervals along the wall, allowed soldiers to spot approaching enemies from vast distances. Smoke signals and fire beacons could communicate warning messages across hundreds of kilometers, faster than any messenger could ride. Second, it created a physical barrier that slowed down invading armies. Horses and carts couldn't just gallop over 20 feet of stone wall. This forced enemies to either breach the wall at specific points, which the Chinese could then defend heavily, or find alternative routes through the mountains and the deserts, which were often worse logistic nightmares than attacking the wall directly. Third, the wall served as a transportation artery for rapid troop deployment. Soldiers could move along the wall quickly, responding to attacks in one region by rushing reinforcements from another. This created a strategic depth that made the border much harder to penetrate. Purpose number 2. Economic control. This is where things get interesting. The wall wasn't just a military infrastructure, it was also an economic tool. Trade routes, specifically the famous Silk Road, ran along China's northern borders. The wall helped regulate trade, where goods entered and exited the empire, and more importantly, who got to profit from it. The Chinese developed a sophisticated system of border gates or passes where merchants could legally enter or leave the empire. These passes became important economic hubs where taxes were collected, goods were inspected, and trade was facilitated, all under imperial supervision, of course. The wall essentially said, you can trade with us, but you do it our way, through our doors, and we take our cut. Purpose 3. Immigration control, ancient style. Long before debates about border walls became modern political footballs, the Chinese were grappling with similar questions. How do we regulate who enters our territory? The Great Wall helped control population movement. It created a clear delineation between inside and outside, between the civilized empire and the wild territories beyond. This wasn't just about keeping enemies out, it was about maintaining a clear cultural and political boundary. Purpose number 4. Prestige and power. Here's a truth that doesn't get discussed enough. The Great Wall was also a massive psychological and political symbol. Emperors who built or extended the wall weren't just defending territory. They were demonstrating their power, their legitimacy, and their dedication to protecting the Chinese people. Building the wall was a way of saying to future generations, I was a great emperor, look what I accomplished. The massive undertaking signaled to other states and potential enemies, this empire has the resources, organization, and determination to construct something incomprehensible. Do not test us. In a way, the wall was ancient China's most dramatic TED talk. Here's proof of our superiority, now what you're gonna do about it. Purpose number 5. Securing the Silk Road. As trade routes expanded, protecting them became economically vital. The wall helped secure the Silk Road's corridors, ensuring that merchants and the valuable goods and taxes they generated could move more safely. The irony? Some of the most famous sections of the wall were actually built not to keep foreigners out, but to protect Chinese merchants going out to trade. So to summarize why the Great Wall was built, basically ancient Chinese emperors looked at the northern border and said, we need protection from horseback archers, we need to control trade, and we need to project power, and honestly, we just need something impressive to put on the travel brochure. And thus, the largest construction project in human history began. 3. How was it built? How do you build a wall across thousands of kilometers of vastly different terrain, mountains, desert, grassland, and river valleys? The answer is very, very slowly, and with an absolutely staggering amount of human effort. Let's talk about the construction of the Great Wall, because the engineering challenges involved are mind-boggling when you consider that this was built without modern machinery, cranes, or diesel trucks. The materials. What the wall was made of depended heavily on what was locally available. In the mountains where stone was abundant, the wall was built from stone blocks. This is the iconic image we see in photos today. Some sections featured huge granite blocks cut with remarkable precision. In the plains and deserts, where stone was scarce, builders used rammed earth techniques. This sounds simple, but it was actually sophisticated engineering. Workers would compact layers of earth, sand, and gravel into wooden forms, layer after layer, creating walls that could be 20 feet thick at the base. Fun fact, rammed earth is so effective that some sections of the ancient wall, built over 2,000 years ago, still stand today. The material science was no joke. For certain sections, builders used materials like bricks, wood, and even reeds in sandy areas. The labor. Now here's where history gets uncomfortable, and we need to be honest about this. The Great Wall was built almost entirely by hand, and by hand we mean by millions of laborers over centuries. These include soldiers. Military personnel were often assigned to construction duties as part of their service. Peasants. During off-seasons when farming wasn't possible, peasants were conscripted for construction. This was sometimes voluntary, often not. Prisoners, captured enemies, and criminals were sent to work on the wall, essentially forced labor. Recruited workers. In later dynasties, some workers were actually paid for their labor, though the conditions were still brutal. The stories of suffering and death are documented in historical records and Chinese folklore. Workers died from accidents, exhaustion, disease, and exposure to the harsh elements. It's believed that the number of workers who died during the construction numbered in the hundreds of thousands. Some estimates suggest millions. The saying, "every brick has a worker's life behind it." Whether this is true, it's impossible to verify, but it reflects a cultural memory of the immense sacrifice involved. There's a darker legend that the wall contains the bodies of workers within its structure, essentially human cement. While this appears to be more myth than fact, archaeological evidence doesn't support widespread human remains in the wall. It speaks to the collective memory of suffering. The engineering. Let's appreciate the technical achievements here. Surveying. Building a wall across mountains requires incredible surveying precision. Workers had to navigate complex terrain while maintaining consistent route. They used astronomical observations, geometry, and simple tools to create straight lines through vast distances. The wall design. The wall wasn't a solid barrier. It was a sophisticated military system consisting of the main wall itself, sometimes with a raised walkway for soldiers. Battlements. Those signature notched tops that allow soldiers to defend while remaining partially protected. Watchtowers at regular intervals, some as close as every 500 meters, in high-risk areas. Signal towers for communication. Barracks and stables for soldiers. Gates, passes at strategic locations. Supporting walls in some areas to create multiple lines of defense. Logistics. Imagine coordinating construction across thousands of kilometers with pre-modern transportation. Materials had to be transported by hand, animal, and simple cart. Food, water, and tools had to be delivered to remote construction sites. Some sections required building entirely new roads just to get construction materials to the site. Who built which sections? The wall we see today, actually represents construction under multiple dynasties. The Qin dynasty, 221 to 206 BCE, built the first major walls, primarily from earth and wood. The Han dynasty, 206 BCE to 220 CE, extended the walls significantly, adding many stone sections. The Ming dynasty, 1368 to 1644, built the most recognizable sections, the ones most tourists photograph today. Ming construction emphasized stone and brick, using sophisticated techniques that created the beautiful, durable walls we associate with the site. Ming engineers also added sophisticated features, like dedicated drainage systems, secret internal communication passages, and crenellations designed specifically for defensive gunpowder warfare. The entire construction process spanned over 2 millennia, with different emperors adding, repairing, and rebuilding sections continuously. To put this in perspective, if you started building when the pyramids were constructed and continued without stopping, you'd be working on the wall when Columbus set sail to America. That's a lot of overtime. Alright, we're about halfway through, and if you're finding this fascinating, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We're just getting started. There's so much more to uncover, including some truly absurd myths about the wall that I'm excited to debunk. But for now, let's keep going, because we haven't even got to the best part yet. 4. Uses since it was built. So the wall got built. Now what? The interesting thing about the Great Wall is that its purpose and uses evolved dramatically over time, even as construction continued. Let's explore how this magnificent structure has been utilized throughout history. Military use, the primary function. For most of its existence, the wall served, surprise, military purposes. During various periods of Chinese history, the wall was actively garrisoned with troops. At its peak, estimates suggest hundreds of thousands of soldiers were stationed along the wall's length. These weren't just guards, they were full military garrisons, with permanent barracks for housing soldiers year-round, storage facilities for food, weapons and supplies, stables for horses, farmland within the wall system to grow food, signal fire systems for rapid communication. The wall essentially created a protected military zone in China's north, a forward defense line that made attacking the heartland significantly more difficult. During times of peace, the wall served as a border patrol mechanism, monitoring who entered and exited the empire. During times of war, when the threat of invasion was real, troops would mass at strategic points and the wall became a defensive backbone for military operations. The Silk Road and trade. As mentioned earlier, the wall played a crucial role in facilitating trade along the Silk Road. The strategic passes, gates in the wall where travelers could legally enter or exit, became important trade hubs. Famous passes like Jiaigugan in the west and Shanhaigan in the east developed into thriving commercial centers. These weren't just customs offices, they were essentially ancient free trade zones where merchants could rest, trade, pay taxes, and resupply before continuing their journeys. The wall helped to regulate this trade, preventing illegal smuggling while facilitating legitimate commerce. It was, in essence, ancient China's way of saying, "We welcome your business, but you go through the proper channels." Cultural and symbolic functions. Over time, the wall transcended its military and economic purposes to become a powerful cultural symbol. Imperial legitimacy. Emperors who maintained and extended the wall demonstrated their devotion to protecting China. It became a measure of imperial success. Literary inspiration. Poets and writers throughout Chinese history have referenced the wall as a symbol of perseverance, human achievement, and the relationship between humanity and nature. Consider this line from a famous Chinese poem. "Who will be the loyal minister, the good general? Who will scale the great wall?" The wall became shorthand for sacrifice, duty, and protective power. Barrier between civilizations. The wall became a symbol of the boundary between civilized Chinese world and the barbarian territories beyond, not necessarily in an offensive way, but as a definition of cultural space. Tourism and pilgrimage. Believe it or not, the wall became a tourist attraction even in ancient times. Wealthy Chinese visitors traveled to view the wall, writing poetry about their experiences and appreciating the engineering achievement. It was considered a worthy journey, the ancient equivalent to posting on Instagram at a world wonder. In more recent centuries, the wall has become one of the most visited tourist sites in China, with sections like Badaling near Beijing receiving millions of visitors annually. Agricultural use. In some areas, the wall served agricultural purposes. The garrisons farmed land with the defensive system's protection, creating agricultural production that supplemented military supplies. Modern uses. Today, the wall serves entirely new purposes. Tourism, obviously. It generates significant revenue and is a source of national pride. Educational value. It's a living classroom for engineering, history, and archaeology. Cultural symbol. It represents Chinese civilization's endurance and achievement. Environmental protection. Some sections now fall within protected nature areas, preserving ecological habitat. Running events. Yes, people actually run along the wall for sport. There's a famous marathon called the Great Wall Marathon, where competitors run up and down the wall's steep steps. Remember, I ran the Great Wall is a flex, it's not a vacation recommendation. So there you have it, a defensive system, trade barrier, poetry inspiration, and extreme sports venue. The Great Wall, doing things other walls can only dream of. 5. Misconceptions and untruths. Now this is the fun part. The Great Wall is shrouded in so many myths and misconceptions and flat out false facts that we've collectively created a version of the wall that exists more in imagination than in reality. So let's clear some of these up, shall we? Misconception number 1. You can see the Great Wall from space. This is perhaps one of the most persistent facts about the wall, and it's completely false. Let me be clear. No, you cannot see the Great Wall from the moon. No, you cannot see it from space with the naked eye, contrary to some claims. No, not even from low Earth orbit is it easily visible. In 2003, Chinese astronaut Yang Liwei confirmed that after a spaceflight that he could not see the wall. NASA has stated repeatedly that the wall is not visible to the unaided eye from space. Why not? There's several reasons. The wall is only about 6 to 10 meters wide. It's much more narrow than people assume. The materials used blend with the surrounding terrain in color. And from space, many human structures are barely visible, and the wall is just not distinctive enough. Here's a fun test. Next time you're on an aeroplane at normal cruising altitude, around 10,000 meters, try and spot the wall. You'll be amazed how difficult it is. The myth likely originated from a 1754 book by William Stuckley that suggested hypothetically such a structure might be visible from the moon. This got repeated, exaggerated, and eventually became common knowledge. The reality is, if you can see the Great Wall from space, you probably have superpowers, and that you should probably be using them for something more exciting than fact-checking architecture. Misconception number 2. The Great Wall is one continuous structure. I touched on this earlier, but it's worth emphasizing. There isn't one Great Wall. What we now call the Great Wall of China is actually a network of walls, built and renovated over centuries by different dynasties. These segments aren't even all connected. The total length is often cited as over 21,000 kilometers. I even said that at the start of this video, and it's more than half the Earth's circumference. But this includes many disconnected sections, walls built by different states, and various defensive structures. If you drove along every piece of wall material ever built, you could theoretically circle the Earth more than twice, but you couldn't walk a single uninterrupted path from one end to the other. Misconception number 3. It was built by soldiers, not slaves. The honest truth is more complicated. While some laborers were soldiers assigned to construction duty, and later dynasties sometimes used paid laborers, the early construction phases, particularly under the Qin dynasty, involved significant forced labor, including prisoners and conscripted peasants. The wall's construction is deeply entangled with stories of suffering and exploitation. Pretending otherwise isn't helpful. Later periods saw more varied labor practices, including the use of professional construction workers paid for their labor, especially during the Ming Dynasty. The takeaway? The wall was built by people, with all the complexity that entails. Misconception number 4. It was built to keep out invading armies in general. Not quite. While military defense was a primary purpose, the wall was specifically designed to defend against mounted nomadic warriors, the Xiongnu, Mongols, and Manchus. Different threats require different responses, and the wall was optimized for dealing with fast-moving cavalry that couldn't be effectively countered by traditional Chinese infantry. The Chinese didn't build walls against other settled civilizations to the south or east. There was no need. The wall was a response to a very specific military challenge. How do you defend a massive border against highly mobile enemies? Misconception number 5. It's the only Great Wall. China isn't the only civilization that built massive walls. The Romans built walls, Hadrian's Wall, and the Limes Germanicus. The Persians built walls. The Koreans built walls. There's even evidence of ancient walls in other regions. What makes the Chinese wall great is its sheer scale. It's the largest wall system ever built. And the concept of fortifying borders with walls? That's almost universal in human history. Misconception number 6. It was never effective. Here's a nuanced truth. The wall was neither impenetrable or useless. Critics point out that invading armies sometimes breached or went round the wall. The Mongols, for instance, ultimately conquered China, despite the wall existing in various forms. But military effectiveness isn't binary. The wall made invasion harder. It slowed armies, forced them into predictable routes, allowed early warning, and provided defensive advantages. It didn't prevent all invasions, but it made them more costly and difficult. For an empire facing constant pressure from nomadic raiders, that was incredibly valuable. Think of it like a home security system. A determined professional can probably get past your alarm system eventually, but does that mean you shouldn't have one? The wall raised the cost of attack, and that is strategically significant. Misconception number 7. It was built by a single visionary emperor. In popular culture, we like to attribute the wall to one great ruler. Usually Qin Shi Huang, or perhaps a Ming emperor. The reality, the wall was built incrementally over centuries, with dozens of emperors and dynasties contributing. There's no single architect or builder. It's a collective project of an entire civilization across 2 millennia. So next time someone confidently tells you that they saw the Great Wall from space, you have my permission to politely inform them that they've been bamboozled, and that their astronaut application might need some work. 6. Modern meaning. What does the Great Wall mean in the 21st century? This question is worth exploring because the wall has transformed from a military structure into something far more complex, a symbol that means different things to different people. To the Chinese people, the wall holds immense significance as a symbol of Chinese civilization's endurance and achievement. In many ways, it has become an expression of national identity, a physical manifestation of the idea that China has endured for thousands of years, surviving invasions, dynasties, revolutions, and modernization. There's a Chinese saying, "Those who haven't reached a Great Wall aren't true men." The wall represents achievement, perseverance, and reaching for something greater. President Richard Nixon reportedly said after visiting the wall in 1972, "We have been here before. It's great. It makes one feel humble. It makes one think about the course of history." That sense of humility and historical perspective remains central to the wall's meaning. To historians and archaeologists, for scholars, the wall is an invaluable primary source, a physical record of engineering techniques, military strategy, trade routes, and cultural interactions across centuries. Ongoing archaeological work continues to reveal new information about construction techniques, the lives of soldiers stationed there, and the evolution of the wall systems over time. Some sections remain unexcavated, holding secrets we haven't yet discovered. To tourists, for the millions who visit annually, the wall represents adventure, history, and a tangible connection to the ancient world. There's something profound about walking where soldiers walked, seeing the same mountains and valleys that emperors surveyed, and touching stones placed by hands 2,000 years ago. It has become a bucket list destination, the kind of place that feels significant to visit, regardless of your interest in history. The symbol in modern culture. The wall has become a pop culture touchstone, appearing in films, video games, books, and advertising. DreamWorks made an animated film about it. It's been referenced in countless action movies. It appeared in video games from Civilization to Age of Empires. Its imagery we instantly recognize. This pop culture presence has both benefits, increasing awareness, and drawbacks, perpetuating misconceptions. Contested meanings. Here's where things get politically complex. The wall has been invoked in modern political debates about borders, immigration, and national identity, on all sides. Some see it as an inspiration, a historical precedent for protecting national sovereignty. Others see it as a cautionary tale about the futility of walls against human movement. These modern interpretations are contested and reflect contemporary political divisions more than historical reality. The ancient Chinese built the wall for specific reasons, having to do with nomadic warfare, not modern immigration debates. Preservation versus exploitation. A modern challenge is balancing preservation with access. Some sections of the wall have been restored to attract tourists. Others remain ruined in their ancient state. There's an ongoing debate about how much restoration is appropriate, how to prevent erosion and damage from visitors, and how to fund maintenance. The wall is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, granting it international protection, but that protection requires resources, management, and difficult decision about preservation priorities. The wall today. Today, the Great Wall stands as a monument to human ambition, engineering capability, and the desire to protect what we've built. It reminds us that people have always grappled with questions of borders, defense, and interaction with the others. And those questions haven't gotten any easier. In a world of satellites, drones, and digital warfare, there's something almost quaint about the wall. But the underlying human impulse, that desire to protect what's ours, to define boundaries, to create lasting monuments, that hasn't changed. The Great Wall has become a mirror reflecting our own questions about civilization, progress, and what we leave behind. And there we have it, the real story behind one of humanity's most impressive achievements. We started with a fractured China, unification under an ambitious emperor, and a need to defend against mounted warriors. We followed the construction project spanning over 2,000 years, built by millions of hands using tools that seem impossibly primitive. We debunked myths about space visibility, continuous structure, and single-handed construction. And we arrived at a modern symbol that means everything from national pride to tourist selfie opportunities. The Great Wall remains, not as simply a story, but as a complex testament to human civilization's ambitions, capabilities, and contradictions. It's a wall that became a wonder, a defense that became a symbol, an ancient project that still captures our imagination today. Thanks for joining me on this journey through one of history's most fascinating structures. If you learned something new today, hit that like button. If you want more historical deep dives, subscribe and join our community. And remember, in the words of ancient Chinese wisdom, those who haven't reached the Great Wall aren't true men. Now get out there, explore the world, physically, historically, digitally, whatever it takes to satisfy that curiosity. I'll see you in the next one.